To determine the hardware that you need to run certain applications, it's really the applications and mainly the heaviest applications that determine what is it that you need. And so what I've done is I'm looking at three main applications. I'm going to be looking at Microsoft 365. This is the entire Office suite. I'm going to be looking at Adobe Premiere Pro, which is a video editing software. I'm going to look at a game, a high performance game. So let's first open a browser window, and just so that you can see it better, there it is. And really all you have to do is take your software, the software that you want to use this laptop or desktop with, and just write the name of it and systems requirement. And this is really what's going to come up. So I'm just going to click on this one. This is not the ad. And it's going to say system requirements for Microsoft 365 and Office. We're going to go to the subscription plans, which is really what I have. And as you go through it, what you're going to see is these are the requirements. So it needs for Windows, because Office runs on both Windows and Mac OS. So for Windows, it requires at least a 2-core CPU or processor that runs at 1.6 gigahertz, and that's pretty low. Memory, in terms of RAM, it needs at least 4 gigabyte of RAM, or 2 gigabyte if you have a 32-bit system. Again, this is really on the low end side. Hard disk, it requires for Windows, I'm only addressing Windows here, 4 gigabyte of available disk space. Display, you need at least a 1280 by 768, which is kind of high definition, not full high definition or FHD, which would be 1920 by 1080. Graphics, you need graphics hardware acceleration with DirectX 9. That's software that, I think that today Windows is at about DirectX 11 or something like that, or Windows 10. Your operating system, again, Windows 10, server if you need that, browser, a current version of whatever browser, Microsoft Edge, Internet Explorer, Safari, Chrome is what I use, Firefox, and a few other things. Now, notice that what they're saying, actually there are requirements for the business, education, and government. Doesn't look like it's significantly different, but just keep in mind one thing, especially with Microsoft, they typically tend to go on the low end side. So will it run? Yes, it will. Will you get great performance with it? Not so much. You're not going to get great performance. With that, let's move on and check Adobe Premiere Pro, a video editing software, and see what they require. So again, once again, all you have to do is just type Google Adobe Premiere Pro systems requirement. I'm going to skip the ad and I'm going to go straight into, well, systems requirements. So I'll click on that and let's see what comes up. Here are the Premiere Pro systems requirements. I'll go down, and here you can see that there is a minimum specifications and a recommended specifications. So note that you may want to not necessarily choose a computer based on minimum specifications, but at least the recommended ones. So the processor here, you need a 6th generation Intel processor or an AMD Ryzen 1000 or more or newer. Recommended is Intel 7th generation, and I'll show you later when I talk about the CPU and the processor where do you find the generation, because it's really it's part of it. You'll see it. Operating system, you need Windows 10. For minimum requirements, you need 8 gigabyte. I don't know how well 8 gigabyte would do with Premiere Pro, but 16 gigabyte if you need high definition media. So if you're editing 1080p, full high definition media, you'll need 16 gigabytes. If you want to do 4K or more, you'll need 32 gigabytes. I am doing full high definition, so HD 1920 by 1080 for the most part. I do have 16 gigabytes and it's working. GPU, you need a graphic processor, and they actually have a list of graphic cards here, which I'm going to click on in a second. But whether you need 2 gigabytes of virtual RAM, video RAM, not virtual RAM, for the graphic processor, or 4 gigabyte. They recommend 4, and the two computers that I showed you before had 6 and 8, so they would be good. Let's take a look at the recommendation. So they have a list of recommendations for Windows using CUDA, which is what typically they use, or OpenCL. You don't need to worry about that. Just see what they're allowing. My computer has, my laptop actually has a GTX 1050 Ti, which oddly enough is not listed here, but it's definitely stronger than the 980. It's just one generation lower than the 1060. The ones that I showed you today had the 2060, and by the way, they are currently, their current version is the 3080. That is, if you can find it. Again, if I'll go back up to the system's requirements, I'm back in Windows. GPU, hard disk drive, you need at least 8 gigabyte of hard disk drive space. Note that for normal or recommended, they're asking you to have a fast internal solid state drive, SSD. We'll talk about that when we talk about the drive. And cache. Maybe additional high-speed drive for the media itself. So those are interesting things to know, that this is what they recommend, but they're going to tell you, they're telling you that it's going to work on something less than that. So again, high definition minimum, full high definition is recommended. Sound card, not that big a deal, not at least for Premiere Pro. And whether you need Ethernet, it really depends on whether you're sharing things and sharing their workflow. So that's that. Just, to show you, I'm going to this is the only game that I have running on my laptop. This is a flight simulator. It's a digital combat flight simulator. It's one of the most famous ones, one of the best ones. And again, all you do is DCS system requirements, and it's going to take you pretty much there. And it's all in one page. Minimum system requirement, 64-bit Windows. It's not going to run on 32-bit. This requires 64-bit. At Windows 7, 8, or 10. DirectX 11. CPU, they recommend Intel at least Core i3 at 2.8 gigahertz, and I'll show you that. I'll explain that when we talk about the CPU. You'll notice that for high graphic settings, they require at least an i5 running at 3 gigahertz, or the equivalent AMDs. RAM, storage, random access memory, 8 gigabytes or 16 gigabytes for heavy missions versus 16 gigabytes and 32 gigabytes for heavy missions. Free hard disk space, 120 gigabytes required for both of them. They strongly recommend, not strongly, but they recommend to have a solid state drive. They didn't recommend that as a minimum. So will it run without a solid state drive? Yes, but they recommend it. Discrete video card. So here they're saying at least have a NVIDIA GeForce 760 or the AMD kind of equivalent. But if you want better performance, they're asking you to have at least a GTX 1070. So I'm actually at 1050 Ti, and which is less than that. They're offering you several ones. 8 gigabyte of VRAM is recommended, of video RAM. There is another recommendation for VR systems. It doesn't really apply to us. That's virtual reality. This is having goggles. So this is essentially, you know what? I'm going to take one more. I'm going to say OBS system requirements. And they actually even, I guess, say 1050p. And let's say what they're saying. System requirements for OBS, DirectX 10, at least GPUs. They are recommending a GPU. Windows 8, 10. Hardware encoders, they are recommending that you use a GPU, which I have. So you can, every piece of software that you might have will have this. Just Google the name of your software and system requirements or hardware requirements, and you're going to find this, and this would help you know what are the minimum requirements that you need for your computer. And it gives you requirements for a balanced computer where you don't have one component that's, over the top and another one that's a lazy dog and will hold you back. So think about the software that you're going to need. that you intend to run on this computer, and based on that, choose or at least set the minimum to what you're going to need, especially when we start talking about hard disk drive. Hard disk drive for DCS said it requires at least 120 gigabytes, but this is per software, so any other software is going to add to that. You need more storage on your disk drive.